Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something powerful. Manipulation is a tool. Like fire, it can warm your home or burn it to ashes. Too often, we find ourselves in situations where someone else is stoking the flames not to warm us, but to control us. What if I told you that you could learn to wield that same fire, not to hurt, but to illuminate your path? Power dynamics are an intrinsic part of human relationships, whether we consciously recognize them or not. They shape the way we interact, influence, and are influenced by others. To truly understand manipulation, we must first dissect these dynamics, as they are the invisible threads that manipulators use to weave their influence over us. Power doesn't always come from an obvious source like authority or position. It can be subtle, arising from emotional leverage, psychological tactics, or even social circumstances. In every interaction, there is an exchange of power. Sometimes it's balanced, where both parties respect each other's autonomy, and other times it's imbalanced, where one person seeks to dominate or control. Manipulators thrive in these imbalanced dynamics. They are skilled at identifying vulnerabilities, reading emotions, and exploiting situations to tip the scales in their favor. Their tactics are often so seamless that you may not even notice the shift until the weight of their influence feels overwhelming. Recognizing this requires a heightened level of self-awareness. You must become attuned to the patterns of behavior that signal manipulation. Is someone consistently making you doubt your decisions? Are they using guilt, fear, or obligation to sway you? Perhaps they position themselves as indispensable, creating a dependency that you didn't agree to. These are the subtle cues of a power dynamic at play, and manipulators are adept at masking their intentions behind seemingly innocent actions. But it's not just about observing their behavior, it's also about reflecting on your own. Ask yourself, how do I respond in these situations? Do I unconsciously hand over my power by seeking approval or avoiding conflict? Do I let someone else's opinion of me dictate how I see myself? The truth is, manipulators can only exploit what you allow them to. When you are unaware of the power dynamics at play, you inadvertently become a participant in your own manipulation. Understanding these dynamics also means recognizing the broader context in which they occur. Power doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is influenced by cultural norms, societal structures, and even past experiences. For instance, someone might use societal expectations, such as family obligations or professional hierarchies, to justify their control over you. They might appeal to tradition, authority, or even love to veil their manipulation, making it harder to identify and resist. It's essential to understand that power is not inherently bad. It is a tool, a force. The problem arises when someone wields it unfairly or unethically to serve their interests at your expense. Manipulators often position themselves as allies or confidants, creating an illusion of mutual benefit while subtly steering the situation to align with their goals. They know how to make you feel indebted to them, how to plant doubts in your mind, and how to make you question your reality, all while maintaining their image as someone trustworthy. By acknowledging the power dynamics at play, you begin to strip away the manipulator's greatest weapon, your unawareness. You start to see the layers beneath their actions, the unspoken motivations behind their words, and the patterns that give them their influence. It's not an easy process. It requires a deep, honest look at the relationships and interactions in your life. It requires you to confront uncomfortable truths about who holds power and how it is being used. Reclaiming your narrative is about taking control of your story, your identity, your voice, and the way you move through the world. It's recognizing that your life, your choices, and your experiences are yours to define, and refusing to allow others to distort or dictate them. Manipulators are skilled at twisting your narrative, either subtly or overtly, to fit their own agendas. They may frame situations to make you feel small, powerless, or dependent, often rewriting your story in a way that serves their purpose while undermining your sense of self. This process begins with understanding how narratives are formed. Every day, in every interaction, people form perceptions of you based on what you say, do, or even allow. Over time, these perceptions can evolve into stories about who you are, what you're capable of, and what you deserve. Manipulators excel at planting seeds in these stories, shaping them to suit their needs. They might exaggerate your flaws to diminish your confidence or highlight your past mistakes to keep you tethered to guilt or shame. They might position themselves as the hero of your story, implying that without them, you would falter. Reclaiming your narrative means challenging these false or distorted stories. It requires you to question the beliefs and assumptions you've internalized, especially those that others have imposed on you. Ask yourself, whose voice am I hearing when I doubt myself? Whose standards am I trying to meet? Often, you'll find that the narratives you've been living by aren't your own. They're the echoes of someone else's influence, whether it's a manipulative partner, a critical family member, or even societal expectations. This act of reclamation also involves recognizing the subtle ways manipulators try to control the narrative. They may gaslight you, making you question your memory or perception of events. They might downplay your achievements or exaggerate your shortcomings, all in an effort to keep you in a position of doubt and dependence. Manipulators thrive when you accept their version of the story as truth. But when you start to see through their tactics, you begin to reclaim the pen. You start to rewrite the narrative, filling it with your truths, your perspectives, and your vision for your life. It's important to acknowledge that reclaiming your narrative is not just about rejecting manipulation, it's about actively defining who you are. This means identifying the values, beliefs, and goals that truly matter to you, independent of anyone else's influence. It's about standing firm in your identity, even when others try to diminish it. Manipulators often prey on people who are unsure of their own story, using that uncertainty as a foothold. But when you know who you are and what you stand for, it becomes much harder for anyone to distort your narrative. Another key aspect of reclaiming your narrative is recognizing the power of your voice. Manipulators often silence their targets, either directly or indirectly, because a silenced voice is an unchallenged narrative. They may dismiss your concerns, ridicule your ideas, or create an environment where you feel too intimidated to speak up. Reclaiming your voice means finding the courage to express yourself, even in the face of opposition. It means asserting your perspective, your feelings, and your boundaries, knowing that your voice has value. Reclaiming your narrative also involves letting go of the parts of the story that no longer serve you. This can be one of the hardest steps because it requires you to confront the ways you've internalized other people's narratives about you. Perhaps you've been carrying guilt for something that wasn't your fault, or you've been living under the weight of expectations that don't align with your dreams. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting, it means freeing yourself from the grip of those false stories so you can create space for your own. This process is not about proving anything to the manipulator or anyone else. It's about proving to yourself that you have the right to define your life on your own terms. It's about understanding that your worth is not tied to someone else's perception of you, and that your story is valid no matter how much someone else tries to rewrite it. Reclaiming your narrative is a deeply personal journey, one that requires introspection, self-compassion, and a commitment to honoring your truth. Leading with awareness rather than emotion is a discipline that requires deliberate focus and a deep understanding of both yourself and the dynamics at play in any situation. Emotions are a natural and powerful part of the human experience. They provide insight into how we feel about situations and people. However, when manipulators seek to exploit us, they often target our emotional responses because emotions, when unchecked, can cloud judgment and drive impulsive decisions. By learning to prioritize awareness over raw emotion, you gain the ability to navigate manipulation with clarity and strength. The first step in leading with awareness is recognizing your emotional triggers. Manipulators are adept at finding and pressing the buttons that provoke reactions. These might be feelings of guilt, fear, anger, or even love. They know that when you react emotionally, you're more likely to make decisions that serve their agenda rather than your own. Awareness means stepping back and identifying these triggers. It's asking yourself, why do I feel this way? Is my reaction based on the situation at hand, or is it being influenced by someone else's actions or words? Developing this awareness also involves observing patterns. Manipulators often operate through repeated tactics designed to elicit predictable responses. They may use subtle criticism to chip away at your confidence or feigned helplessness to evoke your sympathy. When you approach interactions with awareness, you start to see these patterns for what they are: strategies designed to influence your behavior. Instead of reacting impulsively, you can assess the situation from a position of clarity, recognizing the manipulator's intent without being drawn into their game. Another aspect of leading with awareness is understanding the difference between reaction and response. Reaction is immediate, driven by emotion and instinct. It's the angry retort, the defensive posture, or the impulsive decision made in the heat of the moment. Response, on the other hand, is thoughtful and deliberate. It involves taking a step back, considering the bigger picture, and choosing your next move with intention. Manipulators rely on reactions because they're easier to control and predict. By responding instead of reacting, you shift the power dynamic, demonstrating that you're not easily swayed by emotional provocation. Mindfulness plays a crucial role in this process. When you're mindful, you're fully present in the moment, aware of both your internal state and the external circumstances. This awareness allows you to observe your emotions without being consumed by them. For example, if someone uses a guilt-inducing comment to manipulate you, mindfulness helps you recognize the guilt as a feeling rather than a command to act. It allows you to sit with the emotion, acknowledge it, and then decide how to respond based on your values and goals rather than the manipulator's pressure. Leading with awareness also means recognizing the difference between empathy and emotional entanglement. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of others, and it's a strength that can deepen relationships and foster understanding. However, manipulators often exploit empathy by pulling you into their emotional storms, making you feel responsible for their happiness or well-being. Awareness helps you set boundaries around your empathy, ensuring that you can support others without losing sight of your own needs and priorities. To lead with awareness, you must also cultivate emotional resilience. This doesn't mean suppressing or ignoring your emotions. It means developing the capacity to experience them fully without letting them dictate your actions. Resilience comes from understanding that emotions are temporary. They ebb and flow like waves. By grounding yourself in this understanding, you can ride the waves of emotion without being swept away. Resilience also involves practicing self-compassion, recognizing that it's okay to feel hurt, angry, or sad, but those feelings don't have to define your response. A key element of awareness is the ability to shift your perspective. Manipulators often try to narrow your focus, making you see the situation only through their lens. They might exaggerate a problem, minimize your concerns, or create a false sense of urgency to push you into action. Awareness allows you to zoom out, consider alternative viewpoints, and assess the situation more objectively. This broader perspective helps you see the manipulator's tactics for what they are and choose a course of action that aligns with your best interests. Another important component of leading with awareness is separating facts from feelings. Manipulators often blur this line, using emotional arguments to obscure the truth. They might appeal to your sense of loyalty, fear, or obligation, making it difficult to see the situation clearly. Awareness helps you distinguish between the actual facts of a situation and the emotions being used to influence your perception. By focusing on the facts, you can make decisions based on logic and reason rather than emotional manipulation. Leading with awareness also involves practicing patience. Manipulators often rely on creating a sense of urgency, pushing you to act quickly before you have time to think things through. When you lead with awareness, you give yourself permission to pause, reflect, and take your time. This patience not only disrupts the manipulator's tactics, but also allows you to approach the situation with a calm and composed mindset, ensuring that your response is aligned with your values and goals. Transforming defense into strategy requires shifting your mindset from merely reacting to manipulation to proactively using your understanding of it to your advantage. It's about moving away from a position of vulnerability where you are constantly shielding yourself from someone else's tactics toward a place of empowerment, where you actively shape the dynamics of the interaction. Defense is important, but strategy goes a step further, allowing you to turn the manipulator's moves into opportunities for growth, strength, and control. At its core, this transformation begins with recognizing the limitations of a defensive stance. When you are in defense mode, your primary focus is on protecting yourself from harm. You may find yourself constantly on edge, anticipating the manipulator's next move and reacting in ways that feel necessary but don't necessarily serve your long-term goals. Defense often feels like survival, and while it may keep you safe in the short term, it doesn't allow you to take the reins of the situation or steer it in a direction that benefits you. To shift from defense to strategy, you must first understand the manipulator's methods and motivations. Manipulators are often predictable in their tactics, whether they rely on guilt-tripping, gaslighting, passive aggressiveness, or outright coercion. Pay attention to these patterns, not just to defend yourself against them, but to identify opportunities to use them to your advantage. For example, if someone frequently uses guilt to pressure you into compliance, you can anticipate their approach and prepare a calm, assertive response that disarms their tactic while reinforcing your boundaries. A key aspect of strategy is reframing the way you view the manipulator's actions. Instead of seeing their behavior as a threat to be avoided, consider it a piece of information and insight into how they operate and what they want. This shift in perspective allows you to respond with intention rather than emotion. When you approach the situation strategically, you start to see the manipulator's behavior as predictable and manageable, rather than overwhelming or intimidating. This awareness gives you the upper hand as you can plan your responses with precision and confidence. Another element of transforming defense into strategy is mastering the art of redirecting energy. Manipulators often rely on creating tension, conflict, or emotional upheaval to achieve their goals. Instead of engaging with them on their terms, you can redirect the energy of the interaction toward a more constructive or neutral outcome. For instance, if someone attempts to provoke you into an argument, rather than defending yourself point by point, you can steer the conversation toward a broader, less emotionally charged discussion that diffuses their tactic and shifts the power dynamic. Strategy also involves setting traps not in a malicious way, but in a way that allows you to reveal the manipulator's tactics or intentions for what they are. This can be done subtly by asking pointed questions, repeating their statements back to them, or creating situations where their manipulative behavior becomes evident to others. By exposing their tactics in a calm and composed manner, you not only protect yourself, but also weaken their influence in the broader context of your relationship or environment. To transform defense into strategy, it's essential to shift from a reactive mindset to a proactive one. This means thinking several steps ahead and considering the long-term implications of your actions. Ask yourself, what is the manipulator's ultimate goal? How can I position myself in a way that not only neutralizes their influence, but also furthers my own objectives? Proactive thinking allows you to take control of the narrative, ensuring that your actions are guided by your values and priorities rather than the manipulator's agenda. Emotional regulation plays a crucial role in this transformation. Manipulators often rely on triggering emotional responses to keep you off balance and reactive. When you focus on strategy, you prioritize staying calm, composed, and deliberate in your actions. This doesn't mean suppressing your emotions, but rather channeling them in a way that strengthens your resolve and clarifies your decisions. A calm demeanor not only frustrates the manipulator, but also reinforces your position as someone who cannot be easily swayed or manipulated. Another important aspect of strategy is timing. Manipulators often create a sense of urgency to pressure you into making decisions without fully thinking them through. By slowing down the pace of interactions and taking time to consider your responses, you regain control over the situation. Strategic timing allows you to respond on your terms, rather than being rushed into a course of action that benefits the manipulator. Boundaries are a critical tool in transforming defense into strategy. Instead of using boundaries solely as a protective shield, think of them as a framework for guiding interactions. Clearly defined and consistently enforced boundaries send a message that you are in control of the relationship and that manipulative tactics will not be tolerated. Over time, this strategic use of boundaries can discourage the manipulator from continuing their behavior, as they realize their efforts are futile. Communication is another powerful tool in your strategic arsenal. Manipulators often rely on ambiguity or miscommunication to maintain control. By communicating clearly, assertively, and transparently, you can disrupt their tactics and ensure that your intentions and expectations are understood. Strategic communication also involves listening carefully, not just to the manipulator's words, but to the underlying messages and motives they convey. This awareness allows you to respond in ways that neutralize their influence while advancing your own goals. Ultimately, transforming defense into strategy is about reclaiming your power and using it with intention. It's about recognizing that you are not a passive participant in the manipulator's game, but an active player with the ability to influence the outcome. By approaching interactions with a strategic mindset, you can turn even the most challenging situations into opportunities for growth, self-discovery, and empowerment. Holding boundaries firmly is one of the most powerful tools in maintaining your autonomy and protecting yourself from manipulation. Boundaries are not just rules you set for others, they are expressions of your values, your self-respect, and your understanding of what you need to feel safe, respected, and whole. They define the limits of what you are willing to tolerate and act as a guide for how others should interact with you. When you hold your boundaries firmly, you establish clear guidelines for your relationships and interactions, signaling that you are in control of your space, your time, and your emotions. The process of holding boundaries begins with understanding what they truly represent. Boundaries are not walls meant to shut people out. They are standards you set to preserve your well-being and to foster healthier connections. They can be physical, emotional, mental, or even spiritual. For example, a physical boundary might involve protecting your personal space or deciding who you allow to touch you, while an emotional boundary might mean refusing to take responsibility for someone else's feelings or problems. Recognizing and defining these boundaries requires deep self-awareness, as you must first understand your own needs, triggers, and limits. Manipulators often test and push boundaries as part of their strategy to gain control. They might ignore your requests, dismiss your needs, or subtly erode your sense of agency over time. They thrive on ambiguity and hesitation, knowing that if they can make you question or compromise your boundaries, they can expand their influence over you. This is why clarity is essential when setting boundaries. Ambiguity invites negotiation, but clarity leaves no room for doubt. When you state your boundaries explicitly and with confidence, you make it clear that they are non-negotiable and that you expect them to be respected. Once boundaries are established, the next challenge is enforcement. Holding boundaries firmly means standing by them consistently, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. This can be especially difficult in situations where the manipulator uses emotional tactics like guilt or anger to pressure you into compliance. For example, they might accuse you of being selfish or unreasonable, hoping that you'll relent to avoid conflict or to maintain harmony. In these moments, it's crucial to remind yourself why the boundary was set in the first place and to resist the urge to justify or over-explain your decision. Your boundaries exist to protect you, and you do not owe anyone an explanation for prioritizing your well-being. Maintaining firm boundaries also requires vigilance, as manipulators often attempt to test your resolve over time. They might respect your boundaries temporarily, only to challenge them later when they sense an opportunity. This is why consistency is key. Every time you allow someone to cross a boundary without consequence, you signal that the boundary is flexible or negotiable. On the other hand, consistently reinforcing your boundaries teaches others that you are serious about them and that you will not tolerate behavior that violates your limits. Another important aspect of holding boundaries is recognizing that saying no is a complete sentence. Manipulators often rely on people's discomfort with saying no, knowing that hesitation or uncertainty can be exploited. They may pressure you to explain or defend your decision, creating an opening to undermine your resolve. By practicing the art of saying no firmly and without apology, you demonstrate that your boundaries are not up for debate. This doesn't mean being harsh or dismissive, it means being assertive and unwavering in your stance. It's also important to understand that boundaries are not just about what you say, but also about what you do. Actions often speak louder than words, and manipulators pay close attention to how you enforce your boundaries. If you tell someone that a certain behavior is unacceptable but then allow it to continue without consequence, you send a mixed message that undermines your boundary. Following through on your boundaries with consistent actions shows that you are serious and that you value yourself enough to stand by your limits. Holding boundaries firmly is not just about dealing with others, it's also about managing your internal reactions. Manipulators are skilled at evoking emotions like guilt, fear, or obligation to make you second-guess your boundaries. They might frame your boundaries as unreasonable or selfish, hoping to manipulate you into compliance. To counteract this, you must cultivate a strong sense of self-worth and remind yourself that setting boundaries is not an act of selfishness, but of self-care. Your boundaries are a reflection of your values and your right to protect your time, energy, and well-being. In addition to self-worth, self-awareness plays a crucial role in holding boundaries. It's important to recognize when someone is testing or crossing your boundaries and to respond promptly and assertively. Delayed responses or unclear communication can give the manipulator an opening to continue their behavior. By addressing boundary violations as soon as they occur, you reinforce the message that your limits are serious and that you will not tolerate disrespect. Flexibility can sometimes be mistaken for weakness when it comes to boundaries. While it's important to adapt and reassess boundaries as circumstances change, this should be done on your terms and not in response to external pressure. Manipulators often exploit flexibility by pushing you to compromise your boundaries under the guise of reasonableness or accommodation. Holding boundaries firmly means being thoughtful and deliberate about any changes, ensuring that they align with your values and not someone else's agenda. Lastly, holding boundaries firmly is an act of self-respect that requires you to prioritize your needs and well-being over the expectations or demands of others. This can be challenging in relationships where you care deeply about the other person, as manipulators often use your empathy or compassion against you. However, respecting your own boundaries is not an act of rejection or hostility. It is an affirmation of your worth and your right to define how others engage with you. Using manipulation as a tool for empowerment is not about adopting deceptive or harmful tactics to control others. Instead, it is about understanding the mechanics of influence and using those insights to assert your needs, establish boundaries, and create outcomes that protect and enhance your well-being. In its essence, empowerment through manipulation is about flipping the script, taking the tools that are often used against you and repurposing them to reclaim control over your life and relationships in ways that are ethical, intentional, and self-affirming. Manipulation, in its rawest form, is the act of influencing someone to achieve a desired result. While it often carries negative connotations due to its association with deceit, manipulation itself is neutral. It's the intention behind it that determines whether it's harmful or constructive. When you understand the psychology of manipulation, you can recognize the subtle tactics others use to influence your behavior. By becoming aware of these strategies, you can learn to counteract their effects and, more importantly, use similar principles to empower yourself in interactions. One way to use manipulation for empowerment is through the art of framing. Manipulators often frame situations in a way that makes you question your decisions or feel obligated to comply with their demands. They may present their perspective as the only reasonable one, leaving little room for alternative viewpoints. You can reclaim this tool by learning to reframe conversations to highlight your values and priorities. For instance, if someone pressures you to take on responsibilities that don't align with your goals, you can reframe the discussion to emphasize your boundaries and the importance of balance in your life. This shifts the focus from their expectations to your well-being, subtly steering the narrative in your favor. Another strategy is leveraging the principle of reciprocity, which is a cornerstone of many manipulative tactics. Manipulators often give something, whether it's a compliment, a favor, or a small concession, with the expectation of getting something in return. You can use this same principle for empowerment by offering genuine value in your interactions while setting clear expectations for mutual respect and reciprocity. When you give thoughtfully and strategically, you create a dynamic where others are more inclined to respect your needs and contributions, not out of obligation, but because of the positive energy you bring to the relationship. Building rapport is another way to harness manipulation constructively. Manipulators often build a sense of connection or trust to influence their targets, but this skill can also be used to create authentic and empowering relationships. By actively listening, empathizing, and finding common ground with others, you can establish trust and cooperation. This makes it easier to advocate for your needs and boundaries without resistance, as people are more likely to support those they feel genuinely connected to. The key is to use rapport building not as a tool for control, but as a foundation for mutual respect and collaboration. Emotional intelligence is a critical component of using manipulation for empowerment. Manipulators often exploit emotions to sway decisions, but when you cultivate emotional intelligence, you can turn this tactic into a strength. By understanding your emotions and those of others, you can navigate complex interactions with grace and poise. For example, if someone tries to provoke guilt or anger to manipulate you, emotional intelligence allows you to recognize the tactic, regulate your response, and redirect the conversation toward a more constructive outcome. This ability to manage emotions gives you an edge, as it keeps you grounded and in control, even in high-pressure situations. Timing is another element of manipulation that can be repurposed for empowerment. Manipulators are often skilled at choosing the right moment to make their move, such as when you're vulnerable or distracted. You can use timing to your advantage by carefully choosing when to assert yourself or make requests. For instance, addressing a sensitive issue during a calm and neutral moment increases the likelihood of a positive outcome. Similarly, delaying a response to a manipulative tactic can give you time to think and strategize, ensuring that your actions are deliberate and well considered. Using manipulation for empowerment also involves mastering the power of suggestion. Manipulators frequently plant ideas or guide decisions without making overt demands, giving the illusion of choice while steering the outcome. You can adopt this technique ethically by presenting options that align with your goals while respecting the autonomy of others. For example, if you want to gain support for a project, you can frame your proposal in a way that highlights the mutual benefits, making it easier for others to see value in your perspective. This approach not only empowers you, but also fosters a sense of collaboration and shared purpose. Subtle communication is another tool that manipulators use to influence others, often through body language, tone, or phrasing. You can use this same principle to assert your confidence and authority in a way that feels natural and empowering. For instance, maintaining eye contact, using a steady tone of voice, and choosing words that reflect your confidence can subtly convey that you are in control of the situation. These small adjustments in how you present yourself can have a significant impact on how others perceive and respond to you, giving you an advantage in negotiations and interactions. Boundaries can also be reinforced through empowering manipulation. Manipulators often test boundaries to see how far they can push, but you can use their tactics against them by responding in a way that reaffirms your limits. For example, if someone attempts to guilt you into breaking a boundary, you can acknowledge their feelings while firmly restating your position. This not only disarms their tactic, but also reinforces your control over the interaction. By staying calm and consistent, you demonstrate that your boundaries are non-negotiable, subtly shifting the dynamic in your favor. Lastly, understanding the psychology of persuasion can help you use manipulation as a tool for personal growth and self-advocacy. Persuasion is a natural part of human interaction, and when used ethically, it can create positive outcomes for all parties involved. By learning the principles of influence, such as scarcity, authority, and social proof, you can communicate your ideas more effectively and gain support for your goals. The key is to approach these techniques with integrity, using them to inspire collaboration and respect rather than coercion or control. In conclusion, understanding and navigating the complexities of manipulation is not about stooping to the level of those who seek to exploit or control you. It's about reclaiming your power, your voice, and your agency. It's about transforming the energy of manipulation into a force that works for you rather than against you. By recognizing the tactics, holding firm to your boundaries, leading with awareness, and reclaiming your narrative, you not only shield yourself from harm, but also create an environment where your truth thrives. You are not a passive participant in anyone else's game. You are the author of your story, the architect of your boundaries, and the strategist of your own empowerment. By choosing to approach these challenges with clarity, intention, and a fierce commitment to your own values, you turn every interaction into an opportunity for growth and self-mastery. So stand tall, speak firmly, and let your actions reflect the unwavering strength that lies within you. Because when you lead with purpose and integrity, even the most complex situations become stepping stones to a life where you are in control.